Ну что же,
Гондеру. Он является управляющим директором компании Moneythink.
officer of Moneythink. Their approach is very different. They rely upon things from real life, and young people teach young people. So this is data and information transfer between.
Thank you very much. Consider the following hypothetical scenario. Right now, somewhere in the world, there is a Brazilian entrepreneur paying a Russian software developer instantly through PayPal or another payment system, who learned how to code through an online learning community, and whose daughter or son is watching Khan Academy or another free e-learning software to learn science and math. And they're all friends on Facebook, and they're all following each other on Twitter. This generation is more interconnected than any generation in the past, and every generation into the future, as I'm sure Yevgenia can confirm, will be even more interconnected. Why does this matter with regard to financial literacy? Because when we're looking at ways to reach out to the youth beyond conventional means, we have to do two things. First, we have to look at changes in the terrain. How is the landscape of financial education and financial literacy, as well as technology and finance and media, changing? And the second thing we have to do is look at what's obvious. What do we already know that's working? Luckily, I only have 10 minutes to talk, because some of what I would say would be redundant to the very smart things that have already been said. So first, a few changes in the terrain. Look at the industries involved in the hypothetical scenario that I described. The fastest growing and rapidly evolving technologies on the planet are in education, finance, and media. This means that the flow of knowledge, money, and information is becoming more interconnected than ever before. And educational opportunities, payment systems, and news sources will only grow more interlinked, participatory, and instantaneous with every forthcoming generation. This is important for two reasons. The first reason is, with greater connectivity across global technology systems like mobile phones, we will have more commonality in financial systems and learning methods than we've ever had before, which will allow for a more globally unified and adapted approaches, which are, unified and adapted, customized, used to seem like mutually exclusive ideals. Now they are packaged together because of technology. These approaches will be possible from the standpoint of financial literacy education all the way to financial inclusion. Russian students will be able to use the same learning software on their phones and access the same financial products as American students and Nigerian students, allowing for faster innovation cycles and improvements serving a greater number of citizens globally. The second reason is that with greater integration of these technologies, you have more accurate measurements of impact and learning, more accurate predictions of consumer habits and behaviors, and more effective financial products better serving consumers at all levels of the socioeconomic spectrum. Another, I'll actually skip this part. So I've built an organization with the help of some amazing partners called Moneythink. And just sort of for context, we started after the housing crisis when we realized that not all consumers make rational economic decisions. We were at the University of Chicago studying economics, thinking that we knew all of these concepts, but just a few streets away in Chicago, there were very, very poor families that needed economic help. But there weren't educational efforts to serve those families, so we started a volunteering program very similar to the great one that we heard about from the Czech Republic earlier today, where university students go and teach local teenage students. And over the past 5 years, we have innovated 12 curricula, several technologies. We've worked in different cases, all measured through experimental studies with over 7,500 young people, mainly ages 16 to 18, but of all ages. And our main focus has been learning and rendering our organization obsolete. So we do not want to have to exist after we have done our job as an organization. And that has enabled us to learn rapidly. Today, in addition to the innovative changes in terrain, I'm going to share a few things that we have learned based on existing evidence and obvious intuitive approaches from things that have been around a very long time that are often overlooked when we talk about nudging and behavioral economics insights and all of these new sort of tricks and hacks. Innovation, I think this term, effective innovation, which you see up here, innovation is not valuable in its novelty, but in its ability to drive better outcomes. Much of what is innovative is what we already know, just augmented slightly. So today I'll share a few of those things. We've discovered that for our organization, there are 5 ingredients for success. One is that it's student-centric, very similar to what Anna said earlier about user-centric design. 2 is that it's simple, that students do not get lost in the details. 3 is that it's actionable, that students have an immediate opportunity to practice and internalize the knowledge that they're learning. 4 is that it's personalized or customized to the student's personal context. And finally, that in cases where technology is available, it's important that we think seriously about how to use it. So I'll go very briefly through these. So the first, I give a negative example for each and then a positive example for each. So what you see on the left-hand side is an elderly person's hand with very little change, and it represents retirement. In our experience, when we first started, we looked at some of the very renowned curriculums in financial education, and they all started with retirement. And so we tried to teach that, and we were very humbled because students fell asleep while we were teaching to them. And we realized that we should ask them, what matters to you? What do you think about? How do you think about money? And they said, well, we're certainly not thinking about retirement. And so we switched it and we said, well, what are you thinking about? And they said, this great pair of shoes, or the dance party next week, or buying books for university. And so we said, well, let's set some goals together for those things that you care about, and then assign financial values to those and create plans. And the level of motivation in our students skyrocketed. The second thing that we've found to work is being as simple as possible. So compound interest, for the sake of numeracy, has been sort of a popular topic. You know, we should teach formulas because it improves math capability and it's a great practicing chance. I think that that is true if you're striving for academic outcomes and financial literacy is a means to that end. But if the outcome you're striving for is economic prosperity in an immediate, digestible, applicable way, you want to simplify this. This idea mentioned earlier of rules of thumb, or what's the one thing, has been validated through research. Students can learn and memorize a lot of things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they can bridge from theory to action. And so instead of focusing on the details and the formulas and the concepts in the abstract form, why don't we focus more on why things are important and how can we change attitudes so that students are encouraged to learn these things on their own. Third, can we make things more actionable? So first there were lectures, and then there were slideshows, and then there were worksheets, and then there were silent activities. These are traditional approaches used in academic education, but financial education is not the same thing as academic education. It is practical education. You can ace a test, you can get a very high score on a test for financial literacy, but it doesn't mean you're going to be less tempted or less inclined to buy an expensive item on a Friday evening. So instead of just teaching the concepts, can you take students to the bank? Can you give students a simulation activity like with the coins mentioned earlier so that they can act and play out a simulation to internalize the knowledge immediately? On the right-hand side is a field trip that we do in our program in Chicago, where we take students to the bank. They get to set up accounts, and then they immediately get a deposit from the bank so that they realize, wow, I went to the bank and I got paid immediately. I should keep doing this. Number 4, personalizing it. So again, rather than the lecturing model, how can we bring in additional volunteers or support or role models, mentors, business people to supplement what is already happening in schools or volunteer programs, to provide smaller group settings to customize the learning for each individual student. Small student-to-teacher ratios, varied activities, and rapidly iterative teaching approaches, meaning a student did not do well on this week's quiz, so how can we change our approach as teachers? How can we as teachers treat ourselves like students so that we are learning about our students with them, so that it's an exploration process, it's a discovery process. We are not superior to the student, we are equals, and we are learning together. And the student becomes more engaged because then they feel a sense of responsibility to the teacher. They feel like, wow, I can teach you something too. We're partners. And then finally, technology-enhanced learning. I think the biggest new field for this that I can foresee, just based on talking to a lot of people who are much smarter than me, is blended learning. It's blended learning, which is combining online, out-of-classroom learning with offline, in-classroom learning. So how can you supplement what's happening in the classroom with online activities out of the classroom? Education technology is very hyped up when you talk about innovation and entrepreneurship and venture capital. It's a big booming thing. But it's hyped up, I think, for the wrong reason. It's hyped up very often because of the reach, of the scale, that children in Africa can now watch courses from MIT. Well, great, but chances are children in Africa probably don't want to watch courses from MIT in their spare time. And so how do you make the most of this opportunity? Well, the real power is in how the online learning can supplement and enhance the things we already know about education and how it works. With that, I think I'm very grateful. We have work to do, listening to students, keeping it simple, offering opportunities to practice, personalizing and customizing the education, and using technology to enhance the experience and capture data. But the future is bright if we can all remember what we felt like when we were young and trust our intuition and trust our inner child. So thank you.